All right, we are live with Marjorie Abdelkrime. Marjorie, thank you for joining us. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
The great debate, not just any
Yes.
conversation. This is the great debate. That's right. Well, I really appreciate it because we've talked, about a bunch of things offline, and we decided to kind of have this tough conversation publicly.
Mhm.
And for someone in your position, that's incredibly risky, And so let's kind of back up a little bit for folks who don't know you. I can tell you some of my favorite things about you are, you're so outspoken. We see you everywhere standing up for people all over the world. You're incredibly bright. You're a great conversationalist. You are very open about your religion, your ethnicity, obviously your gender. I think it's so cool also about your educational background too. I think you break so many stereotypes, and the fact that you're willing to talk about it is just intoxicating to me. I want to know more, and I think a lot of people feel that way. So for folks who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background.
Yeah. So as Sabrina mentioned, Marjorie Abdelkrime. I'm based in the great state of New Jersey, and that we can have a debate about as well. And I work for VMware, so on the official side of things, I work for VMware. I lead a team of amazing architects and strategists globally that help our customers with their multi-cloud strategy. But that's one aspect of who I am, and what I value in life. I'm an advocate for women. I'm an advocate for the underprivileged that are trying to break through some of the boundaries that are put in front of them, and very outspoken about the topics around that. I've been in tech for, the other day I was telling someone this, 22 years. So it's been a long run, and it's changed over time, but excited to see where it's going, and how the world is really shifting that dialogue and that conversation. And I'm glad to be a part of it and a part of that discussion.
Yeah. One of the things I want to start with is something you and I talked about offline is, what role does any of this, we call it DEI, diversity, I like to say equity, not equality, and inclusion. But what role does it actually play in technology? Why are we even talking about it? Should we be talking about it?
Yeah, I think it's an important topic, right? Especially as we look to break some of the barriers that still exist, and they're still there, right? For many of us, whether it be the educational barrier, the gender barrier, the ethnic and racial barriers, those are still, unfortunately, still part of society and still part of the workforce. And making sure that companies continue to prioritize this conversation around DEI is extremely important, and we can't let them lose sight of it. Yes, we're making progress, but there's just still so much work that needs to be done.
Where do you see that work needing to be done? Where do you think, here's an area where we can actually impact the industry, the country, the world?
I think there's on every front, right? I think there, right? Each one of them has, areas where we can improve. I think the biggest area where we still suffer from is this notion of bringing everyone along in that conversation. I think sometimes people, when they hear the term DEI, they're like, well, that doesn't include me in that conversation. And it does, right? It's a how do we round out teams? How do we round out organizations and humans, right, in general, and the way that we think and the way that we perceive things. I think it's extremely important for everyone to feel like they're a part of that discussion, and it's not a us versus them conversation. Now let's talk a little bit more nuanced in terms of what areas. I do still feel that the gender conversation is a big one that needs to be addressed. We still don't have that many women in tech, right? And I'm sure you've seen the statistics. Over time, we're finding that less and less women are entering the educational fields of STEM, right? Why is that? What's causing that? And then, the racial conversation, we haven't even broken through the racial conversation. I am a Latina, to what you referred to earlier. I'm proud to talk about it all the time. And I look at my peers, I maybe know like one or two Latinos that work in the US, right outside of my LATAM team members. They just don't exist. I don't see them. It's not as visible.
And we've explored this a little bit. I come from a very, let's call it humble background, extremely humble. I'm an immigrant, I'm a female in tech. I'm a millennial. I had a very random way to tech, was not planning on being in tech. So I kind of found my way here through some really amazing mentors. But not everybody has that level of access, and not everybody has that level of awareness that they need to have mentors. Is there something we can do? Is there something that can be done maybe to help kind of bridge that gap or kind of drive more diversity into tech? Or is it something that these kinds of conversations are necessary? What do you really do? Or is it just kind of pat yourself on the back, we had a good conversation,
Yeah, there's a lot that can be done. So there's many organizations out there that focus on what I call bridging the opportunity divide, right? And making sure that they're focusing on communities that are, and I learned this term recently from someone, underestimated, right? Where many times students, one, they don't know that they can go into a professional career. They don't know that the opportunities might exist for them. They believe that the circle that they are a part of and the cycle that they live will be the continued one, not one that they can break out of. So how do we as professionals go back to those communities and demonstrate to them that there is a way? Well, there are organizations like Empower. It's a nationwide organization that does work in this arena. Year Up does this as well. And there's several others that are more locally specific. And what they do is they bring training programs to these kids and say, hey, you know what? I'll teach you about technology. I'll give you an internship. You have to focus and dedicate your time, and we'll get you introduced to these companies. So they create kind of the pathway for them without them having to really try to figure out each step. The other part that they provide for them are mentors, which is the area where we can all talk, we can all support and we can all participate in it. And these mentors, their role is to really help these young professionals understand what it's like to be in a corporate environment. And it's completely different from, what they've traditionally been exposed to. So teaching them the politics, how to advocate for yourself, how to, network and preach for your own career and develop yourself for your own career. Those are skills that they don't learn, on a day-to-day basis, nor in this program. And these professional mentors can really help contribute. Now that's a conversation that's already at a specific point in time, right? So you're reaching a small percentage of individuals. How do we go back further, right, to the younger kids? And that's a massive outreach. I've not seen any official programs out there that exist that really go and focus to talk about technology and the careers and the development that these kids can have at a much younger age. And this is also a gender problem, right? It's not just a economic issue. It's also going back to young women and demonstrating to them, hey, little girl that's in the second grade, you can be, a technologist, you can be a scientist, you can, achieve whatever it is that you want. And we need mentors that can show them that from an early stage in their life.
Mm-hmm. And, I was just talking to a C-level executive at a Fortune, I don't know, whatever they are, 40, 30. And he said something to me that was incredibly offensive. He didn't mean to be offensive, but it continues to kind of replay in my head. He talked about how he just hires for the right job, the person that's right for the job. And he's like, I don't care about gender. I don't care about education. I just hire the right person for the right job. And on paper, that sounded good, or in a conversation that sounded good. But to me, I go back to those kids, that second grader you were just referring to, or somebody who maybe didn't have the opportunity, the mentors, the education, the whatever, to become the right person for that job.
Yeah.
And I know that this is I can already assume the hate mail's coming, but I really felt like, and again, he did not mean to be offensive. And of course I pushed back. And that's why we called this the great debate, is because we're talking about things that are kind of awkward and risky to talk about as two female executives and, a few rare of us in the industry. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts. When people say I just want to hire the right person, or I don't care about someone's ethnicity, or I don't care about someone's gender. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Is it somewhere in between? What do you think?
Yeah, I think when folks leverage that statement, I get where they're coming from, and I'm not saying hire a person that's completely unqualified, right? That's definitely not the statement that many of us who are advocates for, racial and gender equality and equity in the workforce. I think what we're saying is they never even had the chance to begin with, right? So how do we open that door and make sure that those individuals are given a fair chance, right? A lot of times what happens is that people will open a position and they'll, share it with their network. Well, let's look at our networks. Who do we know? Who do we, share ideas with? Are they all people that are just like us? Then we're not going to be opening those doors. So how do you as a leader begin to have that conversation to say, one, how do I grow my professional network to become a little bit more diverse, expose myself to people that are different, and force myself to bring a candidate pool that isn't the same like me, right? Let me introduce other people into the candidate pool. And part of that means that you got to put more effort into it, right? And it's going to take longer. And I was just reading an article that one of the managers on my team just posted about hiring. And he said, hire slow and fire fast. And that statement, the hire slow component, he's talking about like inclusion. But that hire slow piece is because it takes time and effort for us to find the right candidate. But a lot of times finding that right candidate means going beyond the standard groups of people that we tend to recruit from. And yeah, no one's telling you to hire a person that's not going to be able to do the job. I think there's another area to this conversation, which is the area of investment, right? How do we, as professionals and leaders in our companies, look at the fundings that we get and then say, okay, well, if we truly want to diversify and we can't find the talent, because that's the biggest complaint I hear from people.
Right.
The pipeline is dry. There's no women. There's no minorities. I can't add. Sorry, I did my best. Did you really do your best? What are you doing to help further the growth of diversity in your company? Part of that is going to require investment. Is your company investing in new hire academy programs, right, where they're going towards colleges? Are they investing in veteran programs as well to hire vets from the military and provide them with the right training? Are we looking at return workforce, right? So whether you're a parent, mother or father that was caring for child or family member, and you're now coming back into the workforce, what programs exist to help support you if you've been out of the workforce for the past 10, 15 years? Things have changed, right? So those are programs that I think every company really needs to think about from an investment standpoint, so that they can continue to develop that diverse pipeline that we all really desperately need.
But okay, let me push back. This is a great debate. After all, we'd be letting people down, wouldn't we? Okay, but why? But isn't that like, leave that to the charities, or leave that to the government, or leave that to the churches, or anybody else but IT? I mean, why? Why would a VMware, a Continuum, a whatever, you talk about it as an investment? That just sounds expensive to me.
Yeah.
Why do
Well,
it?
at the end of the day, I mean, the data shows it that having a diverse workforce actually is profitable for your business. So you're going to get a return on that investment at the end of the day. Having a team that's diverse, that can bring you new ideas and really force, a change in the way that you think, can drive innovation, can drive workforce improvement. And, those are things that at the end of the day, if you're caring about the bottom line, it's going to help you.
And I will say, it also, what's interesting about the research, because I this is what I geek out on. This is one of my favorite things, is not only you're getting better in internal sort of innovation, but you're reaching new networks. And so you're able, we just worked on a project where we were helping an organization appeal to a younger buyer. Our decision makers now, our buyers now are younger. And so you're also, to your point, you're getting a faster return when you pull in different generations. I'm so glad you brought up veterans. You know what I mean? It's not just women. It's not just, pick your race or pick your educational background or whatever. It's how do we truly build an inclusive culture? And to your point, we get better immediate return, right? The bottom line looks better, but there's also the longevity as well. You get better retention, you get better networks, you get better ideas, you get better reach. So there's a lot to be said about doing it. But I think, it's a valid question to say, is this really a conversation that should be happening in a technical industry,
I think more so in the technical industry, we really are in a point where if we don't do something to turn that boat, we're just going to crash in that iceberg, so to speak. I have intentionally started signing up for classes and networking events outside of tech, because I want to see is, one, I want to learn from women outside of the industry, and two, I want to understand, are my problems that I'm seeing in our industry the same across the board? And it's not. Like, I talked to some of these professionals, and their struggles are not as complicated as ours. They still have, some of the challenges, but, some of the microaggressions that, that we experience as women is not as prevalent. And it could be because there's more women in some of these different professions, right, than in ours. Very rarely are there two, like the fact that I have another female technical executive in front of me, that just never happens, right? So like, it's just very rare.
And we've talked about that even, have you ever been in a meeting with someone who also wore a headscarf?
Never.
I mean, have you ever, that blows my mind. That blows my mind,
But funny story I know I've shared this with you, but for the audience, we had one sales kickoff a couple of years ago, and it was like our global sales kickoff. And they obviously had folks from the Middle East, and there was one woman, she came from a partner, and people would come up to me and they're like, did you change your scarf? When did you have time to go back to your room? This was in Vegas, right? When did you have time to go back to your room? I'm like, I didn't change my scarf. What are you talking about? And the woman stops me. I finally see her, and she stops and she's like, you're really popular. She's like, everyone says hi to you. So like the concept of a scarf to many people, and sales, tech sales, even less, not many.
Yeah. Have you ever received any pushback, at least that you know of? I mean, I know you just kind of mentioned microaggressions, which we could spend 20 minutes just on that. Have you ever received any pushback? Because I can imagine, how incredibly difficult that must be. You have to have an enormous amount of courage, I would assume.
Oh, for the headscarf. Oh gosh.
Oh yeah.
I don't know about pushback, but I've definitely heard, the inappropriate inferences to current states in other country, and beliefs of some part of the extremist groups in my faith, and asking me if I had similar beliefs. So yeah, definitely I would say that that's the case. I think the other thing is the assumption that I won't speak up. A lot of times people will look at me in a meeting, and I think they're surprised that I'm so vocal and so outspoken. And many of us are like, what? I did have it happen once where I was in a meeting with someone, and it was myself and a male peer and a couple other folks, and we were asking someone questions, and he would always look at the other person when he was responding. I was the one asking the questions. And after the meeting, I was like, excuse me, but don't ever do that again. Like, if I'm asking you the questions, you need to respond to me. And I can tell you that the poor guy, he was fairly young, and he was just like, oh, that was not my intention. I'm so sorry. But sometimes you don't realize what you're doing.
Yeah. First of all, good for you, because I don't know if I would have said something, so good for you for saying, no, you're going to treat me like any other human. You're going to answer these questions. So, and that's really interesting that he said, that's not my intentions. Mm-hmm. I run into this myself we've talked about this too, when you're not sure what questions you can ask, you're not sure maybe how to approach something, or, you're not sure, maybe how to directly ask somebody about something. And so I love that you were, again, courageous enough to say, I'm going to stand up for myself. I'm going to do it respectfully. And that he could come back and say, not my intention. I'm really sorry about that. I hope you apologize.
Oh, he did.
That's good. That's good. It gives you a little bit of hope, but it also makes you realize, because I think a lot of times we're scared to stand up for ourselves out of this, we kind of catastrophize it, size it in our heads. But to know that it's okay and to learn from people like you how to do it is really empowering,
Yeah, it's super important for people to be able to speak up there. I get that question a lot. Do you do it in front of everyone? Do you do it in private? I think it depends on the situation.
Okay.
This one was one where I felt like, I needed to pull him aside and say, listen, not cool. But there have been other times in meetings where I call people out like, hey, that's completely inappropriate. I don't think you should have said that. And a lot of times people are like, what? Like, I can't believe she just said that. And the whole room freezes. And, honestly, I think I've gotten to the point, and also, I'm fairly senior in my role, right? So I think that gives me some power as well to use. And I use it intentionally, but it's important that others see that stuff it's not acceptable.
Right. That's exactly it. And I had a mentor tell me once, don't underestimate who's learning from you.
Mm-hmm.
And so even just in this moment, you gave me that little push to maybe stand up for myself next time. Hopefully there's other people who are watching or will watch this later who will have that little extra push, and throughout my career, I've really learned that the more you advocate for yourself, the more you're really advocating for other people,
Mm-hmm.
And I've told this story before, but I heard about a terrible, brutal attack on a woman, and she ended up not saying anything out of fear. A lot of people tend to do that. And years later came out that the same, man had brutally attacked like a handful of other women. It was so gruesome. It was terrible. And she said, I didn't realize that by speaking up for myself, I was saving other people. If I could have gone back, essentially, of course I would have said something. And so there's so much to that when we're standing up for ourselves, we're standing up for other people.
Yeah,
it's something that,
absolutely.
has just really registered, throughout my career, and just kind of made a lot more sense as I get older and kind of get more comfortable and grow into myself,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I know we're almost out of time. If you had one tip, if you could, that one thing, what guidance tip would you give to, maybe your younger self, people who are maybe in your shoes or want to put people like you in those shoes? Any guidance, any tips that you could provide in our closing remark?
Anytime someone tells you you can't do something, just do it anyway.
I love that. As an avid rule breaker myself, I really appreciate that. Yeah. Show them they're wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, show them they're wrong.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Marjorie, thank you. You are
Thank
just
you.
good people. Thank you for joining,
You.
inspiring more people. I can't wait to see what you do next. Where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or see more of your work? Where can they find you?
LinkedIn is a good platform. I tend to share a lot of ideas and thoughts more on the professional side. If you're looking for more unfiltered talk, I'm also on Twitter, Marjorie STEM. Please do connect.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks.